This is the Global Broadcasting Service, serving remote outposts since 1928.
Hi, everyone. Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Express Monorail.
Caramba, we have something really big for you today.
Welcome, foolish mortals.
Now then, hang on to them hats and glasses, because this here's the wildest ride in the wilderness.
This is the DBC Pod with Phil Schoen and Jason Dodge. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's emergency pod. That's a line I've not said before. We're doing this a day after we recorded our weekly podcast because, of course, Disney puts out some special changes. Genie Plus is gone, Phil. I feel like we need like a Wayne's World, like, whoa effect, right? And for you kids out there, Wayne's World is a very old show from the 90s. So yeah, Genie Plus is gone, Phil, right? In its place. I don't know what we're calling the system now. It's Multipass, it's Single Pass, it's Lightning Lane for all, I don't know what it's called. But essentially, here's the breakdown. Genie Plus is gone. We knew this was coming since May of 2023 when they said something is coming in 2024, but here it is. We all suspected it was going to happen when reservations were gone back in January, but it did not. So Genie Plus is gone. It is now replaced with Multipass, which is basically Lightning Lane, or Genie Plus. It's just a name change. And individual Lightning Lanes are gone and is now Single Pass, right? You buy a Single Pass for whatever. And they're functionally the same thing. There's a Lightning Lane for every attraction. You go into the Lightning Lane, whether you bought it through a Multipass or a Single Pass. There are no longer any individual park Multipasses. It's all one size fits all like it was originally. Only difference is a year and a half ago, it was all $15 a piece. Or no, was it 22? So yeah, almost 2 years ago, it was $15 a piece per person per day, and you get to use it at any park. Now it's, again, one size fits all, but it's probably going to mirror the Magic Kingdom price.
Well,
like
I think that's
20s.
still TBD because Scott Gustin posted that it's still going to be variable by park by day. Like date-based is going to vary.
Really?
Yeah.
So okay, maybe I'm wrong then. So there's a lot we don't know.
Yeah,
that's why this is an emergency podcast.
As much information as Disney put out, and they did actually put out a pretty good FAQ and stuff like that. If you go into the website and stuff like that, there's still, of course, as we're trying to figure out all the little nuances of it, there are a lot of questions. Get this out of the way. One of the burning ones going on is that in some places it's being reported that you can't purchase this or use it until you're on U.S. soil, which sort of drastically impacts our friends from Canada and Europe and the UK and everywhere around the world. We know at least the admin for WDW Magic has said that's not true. It's going to be the same everywhere, but in some of the official stuff from Disney, it said that. So we're getting that out of the way. That's still, I guess, a little bit TBD. Hopefully that is false information.
So basically what the system is now, it's basically mirroring FastPass Plus from back in the day. 7 days prior to your arrival, you are able to book Genie Plus. I can't say Genie Plus, but you're able to book Lightning Lanes for every day of your vacation. So you still have if you have a 7-day vacation, 7 days plus 7.
Yeah, right? That's the max. So the total is 14 days.
Yes. So you could do that. And basically what happens is you go and you buy Genie Plus, you register it for the day you want to go to. You can select up to 3 Lightning Lanes for that day, up to 3, not individual Lightnings anymore. 3. You could buy a Multipass, which allows you to get 3 Lightning Lanes from Tier 1 to Tier 2 in the park. Yeah. Or you could purchase up to 2 Single Passes, which is the upper tier, which is basically individual Lightning Lane.
It's the prior ones that are the individual Lightning Lanes, and those 6 rides are staying the same.
So if you wanted to do one park, you get 3 Lightning Lane selections at day -7. And if you're doing hoppers, you can have to select at least one attraction for the day, use it, and then you'll be able to begin picking selections for additional parks. Did I get that right, Phil?
I think so, yeah. You can only pre-select for one park, even if you plan to pre-hop. So I guess whether you pre-select 1 or 3, it can only be for one park. So if you're going from, say, Animal Kingdom to Magic Kingdom, you would pick one, any of your pre-selections have to be from Animal Kingdom. But then after you use your first one, you can then start booking your next one, and that can be anywhere, and that can be from any tier.
Are you forced to make 3 selections at checkout?
We don't know that yet.
Yeah, that's a big thing right there. So another interesting feature, which I really like, is you cannot pay for you cannot buy a multi-pass until you've made 3 selections. So when you're buying, whether you're buying it 7 days out or where you're buying multi-pass the day of, you have to make 3 selections and then go to your checkout.
Yeah.
So no longer are you buying it and then hoping and praying there's something available. You are guaranteed those 3 selections when you purchase it. So you go through and there's only C-tier attractions left. You don't have to buy it because that's all that's left.
Yeah.
But if you go in at like 9 o'clock in the morning, the day of, you're like, oh, I want to buy multi-pass, and you buy it and you see 3 selections that you like, you are guaranteed to get them.
Yeah.
Other things that are very interesting is no longer is there a 120-minute rule? Thank God. I still stink at describing how that works. There is no longer you get whatever's first available. You do have the ability to select the time of your return, similar to FastPass. Before, we don't know if it's always in 1 hour increments. Like, wasn't it FastPass before? Like, the frames were every 15 minutes, and they were good
something
for an
like
hour.
That. Yeah,
I assume it's going to work the same way at that point. You will be able to modify times and then drop and reselect other attractions, similar to the way Genie Plus works today.
Yep.
But here's another thing that I'm because I'm excited about this, Phil, and we're going to talk about this after we get done with the technical stuff because it brings back planning and execution again to planning, which I'm super psyched for. And you get to use this about like 2 weeks before your vacation, which is like perfect. So you'll be a good guinea pig for the show. Before in FastPass, when you're able to book 3 selections, you're able to book numbers 1, 2, and 3. Once you use number 3, you're able to book number 4. Once you use 4, you're able to book 5, et cetera, et cetera. So you just basically chained them together. You use it and go. What's really interesting, according to Scott Gustin, because I asked Scott Gustin, and he confirmed that this is the way it works. You can always, in the Disney literature mentions, you can always have 3 lightning lanes at any given time.
Yep.
So I think this is really interesting. I don't think any parks really support this much power usage also, which has actual other interesting effects. So let's say you book 1, 2, and 3 at 7 days. Then you go into the park. Once you use number 1, you can book number 4. Once you use number 2, you can book number 5. Once you use number 3, you can book number 6, et cetera, et cetera. So essentially you have 3 tracks of booking.
Yeah.
Right?
And I saw Blog Mickey was reporting it the same way too. So I believe that's how it's going to work. They kind of referred to it as you have 3 slots in, like, say, your backpack that you can put a lightning lane in, a multi-pass lightning lane in. And once you use one, you've now opened up a slot and you can put something else in there. And like I said, that could be at the same park. It can be any tier. It can be at any park. Kind of all those limiting rules are gone once your day of and you've used up that first one, freed up that first slot.
I think DVC Pod should take credit for the figuring this out and also using the word tracks, because that's the language I use when Scott Custon retweeted and liked my tweet. So if everybody uses that nomenclature, you heard it here first. It was from us. Just clarifying this little tiny podcast no one's listening to right now. Okay, so one of the other major things that are coming back from FastPass Plus is tiering, right?
Yeah.
So in every single park except from Animal Kingdom, there are several top attractions. I have these up somewhere. Phil, can you bring that up and we can read that off? They had this at Hollywood Studios already, so this wasn't new. Same thing with Epcot. But every park now, except for Animal Kingdom, has your single pass rides, which is your previous individual lightning, so like Tron and Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. And then everything else is then you have your top tier of attractions, and then you have everything else. So you have it up there, Phil?
I'm working on it. My computer decided to be slow.
So I'll zoom up here and get it here real quick. To kind of give you an idea, Hollywood Studios has done this quite often. And why is it buried under here? It's coming. In any case, so
I got it up now. So for Hollywood
Magic Kingdom,
yeah, and just because they had to change everything, now it's not called tiers, it's called groups. So the first group at Magic Kingdom is Big Thunder Mountain, Jungle Cruise, Peter Pan Flight, Space Mountain, and Tiana's Bayou Adventure.
So that's it. Everything else is in the second group. So when you pre-book, this only matters for pre-booking. you could book one of the first group and two of the second group. And
Yep.
that is or you could book three of the second group if you want to, right?
You're limited to one first group. Yeah.
One of the top group. What is it at Hollywood Studios?
Hollywood Studios, it is Mickey Minnie's Runaway Railway, Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, Rock and Roller Coaster, and Slinky Dog. And I should just mention, obviously, at Magic Kingdom, the single pass ones are still Tron and Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. At Hollywood Studios, it's still Rise of the Resistance.
Yep. And Flight of Passage is still a single pass at Animal Kingdom. There's
correct.
There's
no grouping. Yep.
And did we mention Epcot?
Epcot is the Remy's Ratatouille Adventure, Frozen Ever After, and Soarin' Around the World. Obviously, keep in mind Test Track is closed right now, so I assume that would have been a tier 1.
So another thing we have to now, the result of this is now at 7+ days, you're going to do all these bookings like you did at 60 days back in the day for on-site guests. Now, the only thing you're doing at 7 a.m. is making your virtual queue things done.
7 a.m. during your vacation, yeah.
The day of, right? That's the only thing you have to do at 7 a.m. the day of. And most of these things, most of the virtual queues I think all of them have a 1 p.m. drop. So technically you don't even have to wake up at 7 a.m. And most people can get a 1 p.m. drop unless there's
technical issues or something. Yeah.
And most, like, for example, last Friday, I looked this up as we were talking last week or yesterday about your wife booking virtual queues and stuff like that. Virtual queue for Tron on a Friday lasted almost 40 minutes at the 1 p.m. drop. So you have plenty of time to get a lot of these virtual queues. So I wouldn't worry about that significantly. So most people can sleep in if they really choose to.
Yep.
Let's go over, Phil, before we start talking about strategy, and you have some pros and cons lists I can't wait to get to. I want to talk a couple of things where there are, the WDW Magic forums are going crazy right now with a lot of people like lamenting and complaining or challenging because no one really grasps what this is at this point. So one of the things, Phil, and this is one of your cons, is stacking, right? Mm-hmm. So previously, I kind of worked it out a bit. In order to get more than 3 rides stacked, you had to do your 7 a.m., assuming 9 a.m. open, 11 p.m., 1 p.m. It wasn't until 3 p.m. that you got your 4th. Then at that point, you now had more than you would currently with the current system. So if you don't plan on getting to the parks until after 3 p.m., you are at a disadvantage at this point, right?
Right.
But for those getting to the park super late where you only have maybe 5 more hours, I'm really not concerned about those people. That is your choice for going in late, right? So you're not using half the day for your ticket, et cetera. You're already losing money.
Right.
That's unfortunate, right? I mean, stacking was fun, but again, this is a change. I think it benefits more people than not.
Yep.
The other thing was Wheezy on Discord was going. We were going back and forth. We had a great debate. I don't want to call it argument because argument has negative connotations. And hopefully, you took it that way. That it was positive connotations. I enjoyed this back and forth. He was mentioning, Phil, that he will only be able to get one T1, and he had this list of his. He went to, was it Animal Kingdom in the morning and Magic Kingdom in the evening or the afternoon, and had all of these things that he did. He had like 3 tier 1 rides. In your guess, Phil, will you only be getting 1 or 2 tier 1 attractions per day for this? Because I think he's completely wrong in I think his worries are misplaced.
I think it's going to, obviously, like everything, it's going to depend on the day, so the crowd levels, and it'll depend on which park. So for example, at Epcot, there's only the 3 tier 1s.
I don't think Epcot counts.
If you get Remy early, maybe you could use that and then get Soarin', that sort of thing. I think at Magic Kingdom, you could probably at least get 2, I'd say. And probably the same at Hollywood Studios. I think it's going to be hard to get, 4 or 5, that sort of thing. But I think 2 or 3 on most days is possible.
All right, Pete, I want to get to your pros and cons, but let's back up a couple of things. What do you think about the naming? I'm like all over the place in my brain. I don't know where to start. So what do you think about the naming Multipass, Single Pass?
First of all, the naming conventions that make a lot more sense. They're obviously new. We have to get used to them, and little things like why bother changing tiers to group and stuff like that. But they're sticking with the lightning lane. That's what everyone knows it as. That's what the queue is called. So it's like, I want to get a lightning lane, and I can either do that via a multi-pass option or a single pass. That's it. Like it seems much more straightforward.
Thank goodness.
Than Genie Plus, an individual lightning lane, and then regular Genie and blah, blah, blah. So it's, I still think people, can't we just call it Fast Pass again? But obviously they wanted to avoid that because now there's a charge for it.
Yeah, well, that, and I think everybody's still going to call it Lightning Lane. Yeah. Anyway. Go ahead. You were saying also.
I just wanted to make sure when we did it, I didn't know if we clarified to start. This is going into effect July 24th. So it will be in time for my trip in August. And that means that's when it goes into effect in the parks and when booking can start. So it's not that if you're going to arrive on the 24th, you can do it 7 days ahead of your booking. No, you kind of don't get the pre-book benefit if you're arriving on the 24th. It's the 24th is when it opens for both use in the parks and for pre-booking ahead. And that 7 days is just for on-site guests. If you are an off-site guest or an annual pass holder, that's, a local, that sort of thing, you can only do it 3 days ahead of time. So that's a difference versus Genie Plus, which was more of a even playing ground for everybody, whether you're on-site or off-site. Now they are giving you that benefit, that perk of staying on-site. And if you are on-site, like Jason mentioned before, you could do it for the duration of your trip. So those of you who are staying for longer times, if you're staying for a full week or more versus somebody who's only going for a weekend, you also have the benefit of trying to get the harder to get stuff further out in your trip, just like it was with Fast Pass Plus.
Well, if we're talking about this, why don't you bring up your pro and cons list and we'll go through that, and then we'll get to strategy things that I'm thinking about strategy wise on how to maximize this.
Yeah, so these are what I've come up with as I think positives and negatives. Overall, I should say I think the positives outweigh the negatives. Obviously, everyone's in a different position. Some people like to not pre-plan, so this is reintroducing some pre-planning. But I think for the most part, for most people, it's an overall positive change. To me, the positives, it enables that pre-selecting. So kind of going into your day what you have, what you don't, when you have them. And it avoids the 7 a.m. booking for every day of your trip if you're going to be doing this. Obviously, you still have those virtual queues, but that's much less than having to do it kind of every day if you were going to have Genie Plus.
If you read Disney's language, this was their number one complaint, I think, that they were getting.
Yep.
So, this is a universal positive. I think more people prefer to book it. And I think the main complaint before at 60 days, they didn't want to start planning their vacation 60 days in advance. The majority of people, I loved it. But the majority of people didn't want to do that. So when they're 7 days out, I think that's the minimum amount of time that they could have. And because I think we talked about this, we've been talking about this for years. Like we had Matt's talking about it. He wanted to do it like the 7 day mark for the year. Like he wanted to walk a week long in there. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. But I think 7 days was basically, you're doing it a week before your vacation. And especially now, like just from a, preparing and getting your family ready to go, you're not doing that while in the middle of like getting your passports or making sure your reservations are solid and doing all the last minute shopping and packing and all that other stuff. That's already done. I think if it was like 3 days in advance, it'd be awful because at that point you're either already traveling because maybe you're traveling down early, or you're trying to get your kids out of school. Like all sorts of things could be happening. So I think 7 days is the minimum, and I'm happy it's not closer.
Yep, I agree. The other thing with that too, with the 7 a.m. booking and with how Genie Plus was just first available versus selecting times, you didn't always know what you were able to get, or if it would run out, or if you could get the one you wanted, you didn't know exactly what time it was going to be. So there's a lot of, for somebody like me who had I just had anxiety about that going in, even though I felt confident in what I was doing. There could be an IT hiccup, there could be whatever, and you just didn't know. And this gives a lot more clarity and kind of certainty to going into the day.
I don't know if you want to go through some other things, but like I have the whole time on the phone project management conversation. I don't know if you want to talk about here or talk about after, because it's definitely, I think this is a pro for mental health.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to talk about here or somewhere else.
Oh, we could talk about it now.
Okay, so because it goes to the anxiety of the 7 a.m. thing, right? You know what you're going to get for your first Lightning Lane. So one of my major complaints the first time I used Genie Plus a couple years ago was like, oh my God, I'm constantly refreshing my phone, modifying times. I'm constantly thinking the 2 hour mark. What's more important, 2 hours from now for this other thing? Or do I get one or two of these lesser rides that my family wants to get on and then push out that Pirates or, whatever to later in the day type of thing. So you're constantly moving all these pieces, while booking Lightning Lanes was very easy. Every 2 hours, you just select it. What difference does it make? Well, that's how people only get 4 Lightning Lanes per day. So all that constant moving around is what drained me.
Yeah.
But with 3 separate tracks and you're constantly having 3 lightning lanes, I think that all goes away.
Yeah.
Right?
Or at least is greatly reduced.
It's significantly reduced. Yes. And there's always going to be thinking because my brain doesn't shut up and stop. So I mean that's a me problem, not a Disney problem. But like we book our 3. So what I've always liked about FastPass is once you book your 3, typically if you're a power user, you book your 3 as early as possible so you can get them out and start rebooking as fast as possible. Right? Get your 4th and 5th, that type of thing. Booking your first 3, I'm curious to see how much overlap we can do because previously in FastPass park opens at 9, you get the 9 to 10, then you get to 10, 11, and 11, 12. It was 3 hours a stretch. Yeah. I don't know if this is going to be like you could book all of them at 9, 9:15, and 9:30. Like you could do that now with stacking in Genie Plus. Yeah. I don't know if they're going to continue that. So that'll be interesting. If you can, you're gonna immediately hit the ground running if you want to select all early. We're going to talk about strategies later. But as far as anxiety is concerned, if you have 3 generally in the first couple hours of the park, you're not doing anything. You're not worrying about anything because even if you couldn't do anything for the first 2 hours of the park for your second selection after park open, you're still modifying, you're still checking. I didn't get Jungle Cruise, but I got a late, Space Mountain. Can I find a Jungle Cruise that's earlier so I can start my day? Like you're constantly tinkering with that. With this, I think you're going to have a better runway into your park day and not have to worry about that.
Yep.
Go ahead. You were going to say something.
Oh, did you have more on that, or otherwise I was going to?
No, keep going. Yeah, I mean, just as generally, there's going to be a less managing because you have so much freedom to either be loose with your timing or your mistakes that you're not going to be fidgeting and like having the anxiety, like, oh, if I don't get this, my day is going to be screwed. Because when we were doing our Magic Kingdom day at Christmas, like the non-party day, I could barely get anything, and I was getting high anxiety. Yeah. Like we're waiting on lines, that type of thing. But if I have 3 tracks and we're just all kind of doing this, it should be fine.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm just rambling.
Yeah. Next positive is it does provide a benefit perk for staying on site. We kept saying, there should be more benefits for paying the higher rate. So I think it does give that. I kind of mentioned this before, but the ability to select a return time versus just next available helps give more structure to the day, but also like helps you plan around ADRs, plan 100%. Around like if you want to take a midday break, things like that. It just helps with all that other stuff as well. And Disney, I think in the literature even put it that like the reason they're doing this at 7 days versus 60 is the same as ADRs was they wanted this after you've already booked in your ADRs. Now you can slot this around that. So Disney was kind of doing that in person. Yep. And one thing that I like in U-Messages too, just that it lets you do all the booking before you have to commit to paying for it. This way you find out like if I'm buying this because I want Tiana's and I'm staying off site, I only get to do it 3 days before. Oh, Tiana's all gone. I'm not going to bother paying for it, that sort of thing. So those were the positives I saw with this versus the prior system.
Fair enough. Yeah, I don't see any other positives. I mean, these are big ones, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, these are all the things that we were asking for.
Yep. Negatives, it does lock you into a park, kind of like what we put before. It feels like almost like you now have your park reservations. For most of the time, I don't think that's a huge deal, but sometimes there are times where you might need to adjust mid-trip and you were planning on this, but you didn't get everything done in Magic Kingdom. Now you want to flip to another Magic Kingdom day. It's not as easy to do that because you've had your pre-selections for each day of your trip pre-selected.
I think this is kind of a negative for people that want to be more spontaneous and still purchase this. I don't think it's a huge negative, or I think it's going to be negligible that it doesn't belong. It's like kind of like it's not a positive, it's not a negative. It's kind of be aware of type of thing, I think. Because here's my thinking, like, let's say you pre-book Magic Kingdom, you got 3 things on there. If you can constantly modify them once you pay for it and be like, oh, I decided to change, I want to go to Epcot. I think there's the pool for availability for those tier 1 rides is going to be great enough so you can at least grab one of the multiples in that each park. I think you might have trouble getting what you want at an early enough time, maybe the day of purchase.
Yeah.
But I still think you're going to be able to get one of those rides, but it might be at the time that you want. That's number 1. Number 2, you can always just drop them and change them. Now, with my plan for the bingo style touring that we're going to be doing with my family, the checklist style, we don't know what we're going to the next day. So that might put a damper on that whole thing and not having it. I'm looking forward to seeing what day of purchases look like, whether like, let's say it's Tuesday night and it's a resort day. We're deciding what we're going to do tomorrow. Can I purchase it like 12 hours in advance, and will there be availability for it?
Yeah.
So kind of curious to see how.
Yeah, we
that's gonna
talked,
work.
and I think that'll be. I almost had another section for kind of like TBD, or let's see what the impact is. Is this going to result in less people buying this than Genie Plus, for example? Like, it's more advantageous for on-site people, but if you're off-site or an annual pass holder, like, which makes up the bulk of the daily visitors, are they going to see like, well, wait, all this stuff is already gone or whatever, I'm not going to bother getting it? So we'll have to see if how much, like, what it does for the purchasing versus Genie Plus.
Now, here's the thing. I think what Disney's going to do, because they did it at Fast Best. They do it secretly for Genie Plus. There are what they call drops, right?
Right.
So I suspect that, let's use Peter Pan's flight, for example. I think that at day 7 through park open, there's 100 slots, random number, right? Let's say it's 100 slots, and everybody fills them up, and they don't have any more after that. Then at 9 a.m. at park open, they drop another 100. So people that are just showing up or whatever have the ability to get them. Maybe they're later in the day, maybe whatever. They kind of fill in, let's say the people with 100, like 20% of them are before 11, 40% of them are between 11 and 1, right? So they start slotting them in times where that they weren't heavily picked, right? So they kind of spread it out. And then I think if they're not being used or not being booked, that type of thing, at 1 o'clock, there'll be a drop of more. And then at 5 o'clock, there'll be a drop of more. I think they'll have some ways where they can put more inventory into the system. Yep. So I think if you're sold out at 7 days and you want to change and there's no availability, I think there will be availability at certain points of the day, whether that's at 7 a.m. or not a park open or middle of the day, whatever. I think you'll have that ability.
I guess we'll have to see, and probably also will depend on how the ride's running that day and stuff like that. But yeah, that's a fair point, that if like, don't just assume you're going to be totally shut out and not get on anything good. There still might be value to it. Another negative is, and I understand it's necessary when you're going to be pre-selecting 3 at hand, but I still think tiering's annoying.
That's annoying, sure.
I think it was better. That was one thing I liked with Genie Plus, was you just picked one and then you just picked the next one that you wanted. It didn't have to think about tiering and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a strategy point of view, getting the multiple tier ones like right off the bat is going to be interesting, and see how you can kind of game the system. Obviously, it's going to involve being there at rope drop, right?
Yep.
Early bird gets the worm. If you're going to be a power user, you need to be there at rope drop. I don't want to hear anybody complaining about not getting able to get multiple tier ones when you show up at the park at 6 p.m., right? You should expect for those things not to happen that way. So that being said, there's a couple of things I'm thinking about. So the one tier one, or one from group one, and multiple from group 2 rule is only for pre-booking.
Yeah.
Right. That rule disappears when the park opens, whether it's at rope drop or official park open, I don't know, or early entry or park open, I don't know. So you walk in, you have your first tier 1, and then you have, I'm going to call them tiers because that's stuff in my head. Tier 2s, right? So let's say you could book let's say you book your tier 1, you got 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Then you have, again, let's use Peter Pan Flight. You booked, it's for 2 o'clock. And then you booked the carousel and teacups as your other 2, but you booked them for, 9 o'clock and 9:20, right off the bat, boom, boom. Can you go to the carousel, tag in at 9 p.m., and then immediately get another tier 1 if it's available in inventory?
That's the way it's worded, and that's how everyone's understanding it to be, is that, the tiering goes away. And as soon as you use your first one, whether that's your tier 1 or tier 2 or whatever, it opens up a slot, a track, and you can pick whatever you want for that. Whether it's a tier 1 in that same park, whether it's a tier 1 in another park, whatever. You can do whatever you want at 9:01 after you've tapped into the carousel.
So I think an interesting strategy, assuming that you can stack lightning lanes in the same hour, so like 2 9 o'clocks, right, or a 9 o'clock and a 9:15 at the least.
Yeah.
Can you go to carousel, ding carousel, and just not even get in line, just run up and wave your hand in there, it goes off, and then you walk away, and then immediately book the next one, and then walk over to, I don't know, Winnie the Pooh at 9:15, ding in, and then get your third one and get Jungle Cruise and then Big Thunder Railroad all at once?
I would think it would be potentially you could do that.
I mean, you're being that guy, right?
Yeah. Well, and even if you don't if you still go on the ride though, you should be able to, as soon as you tap in, even before you get on the ride, you should be able to book your next one.
It does now.
Yeah. Sure. So I don't know if there'll be the key thing to your point is, are you able to pre-book 9 and 9:15 or whatever? I'm thinking it's going to be like FastPass Plus, where you could book at 9, and then the next one you couldn't book until 10.
You have to book outside the hour window of the first one, right? You have to stagger them.
But then still, you could do that right at 9, and then right at 10, and then you have now you have 3 tier 1s set or whatever.
Now, here's another strategy I'm thinking of. We have to figure out when the pre-book period ends and the day of booking begins, right? Currently, right now, booking begins at 7 a.m.
Yeah,
right.
And I should have mentioned that before. The pre-booking starts, 7 days or 3 days ahead of time at 7 a.m. Just like it is.
It's not 6 a.m. anymore. It's 7 a.m.
Yeah. And for day of, it would be 7 a.m. as well. So everything's at 7 a.m.
At one point, it switches from that current day where, like, let's say you can at 6 a.m. currently right now, or well, I'm assuming once it goes live at 6 a.m., you can pay for it and book 3 at 6 a.m. for that day. It's a pre-booking thing, right? It's not live. But at what point does it switch over? So if you have your tier 1, your 2 tier 2s, and at 9 a.m., the restrictions go because it's quote unquote live, can you drop one of your bookings, immediately pick up a tier 1? So you have you're holding 2 tier 1s.
Yeah. I don't know how that works if you just drop one and don't even use it, or if the system will even let you do that. I'm not sure if you have to use it or let that time go. I don't know.
It depends on the programming.
I mean, it says you're able to modify. So I don't know if it'll let you modify one day of from a tier 2 to a tier 1, or if you
or can you physically drop it and not say cancel it?
I'm not sure about that.
So or my first initial thought is if you can buy Genie Plus but only select 2 selections and it doesn't force you to select a third, you now have an open slot at 9 a.m. that you can book anything on.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming they're going to force you to pick 3 selections when you go to purchase. Shout out Disney Glimpse that kind of said that on the forums earlier today. So I got a couple strategies in how to get those more tier 1s. I can't wait to see people test this out. And if no one else is thinking this, I need to find them on Twitter and tell them, please test it this way. Because I'm looking forward to that.
I mean, I'm assuming all the vloggers and everybody will be out, and Mammoth Club will have all their videos out, like strategies and fiddle faddling to get as many things as you can and stuff like that. It'll be interesting to see. And then I'll be there within a couple of weeks. So I'll be a quote unquote regular person trying it out. So
all the vloggers will have to book hotel rooms to test this out. So they get 7 days.
Yeah.
Good for Disney.
Yeah.
Make them pay for some stuff. Okay.
A couple other quick negatives I had was one, and this is, I said it was a positive that it's no longer an even playing field because it gives you that perk. If you are an offsite person, this is now a negative to you, that now that you are at a disadvantage versus on-site people. And also if you're only staying for a short period of time, you're at a disadvantage versus people that stay longer. And could this potentially encourage ghost reservations and stuff like that people went through in the past to have kind of false bookings and stuff like that, where just the people that are willing to kind of bend the rules, go the extra mile that, the system lets you do, is that going to use up? Because, that happens sometimes with FastPass Plus, where you like the first day of your trip, even if it was a longer one, sometimes a lot of the good stuff was gone, or the times at least that you wanted were gone, even though it was 7 days before your booking, because things got booked at, then it was like 66 days or whatever out. And this was only your 60 day. So we'll see. That's a negative. And then,
well, here's the thing, just so everybody knows, ghost booking means it used to work the way is if you book like a 14-day vacation, you get to book 14 plus 7, because let's say day 7 of your 14-day booking was your first actual day that you were going to go. So you had 2 different bookings. Yeah. Your fast passes were put to your account, not to your booking. Yep. So you would book a 14-day stay, and you were able to book the back end of your 7 days that matched the 7 days of your actual booking. And then once you booked them all and you hit your 7-day mark, you were then able to cancel, and then your fast passes would stay to your actual reservation. But it'd be interesting to see if they're stuck to your tickets, and if your tickets get taken off of reservation and put to a new one, do they get canceled?
Yeah, it's certainly something. I mean, like you say, it's the way the system does it. Disney could change that and then it won't work. Or if they just manually go in and say, oh, you canceled it, you're no longer eligible for this or whatever. And, that sort of thing. So,
yeah. And let me ask you this. Do we know that if you had park reservations, if you transferred bookings, did the reservations transfer over also? I bet you it works kind of the same way.
I'm trying to remember about resort bookings. I know we had some issues with my wife where she had the like the regular ticket she was trying to use, and we still have an unused annual pass that's not activated to her, and things got like booked to that one versus her regular one, and we had to kind of get it sorted out, but we were able to move it and we didn't lose anything. But I remember at the time I was calling the people I was calling and doing it on the phone. They were like, this is how it should work. like stay with me. And then like we were both like almost like sigh of relief like when it did work. So I think it should be able to do, but you never know with Disney IT.
All right, what are more negatives in your
The last negative I have, and I don't think it's a huge thing, we kind of talked about it, was just the 120-minute rule. Just you do have to use one to trigger the next one. So if you have them all booked for later in the day, you don't get that benefit of like once the 120 minutes after the park opens, you can book another one. You do have to use one before you can book it. Like we said, it just means you have to kind of get to the parks before noon or something like that to get benefit from it. So
to me, this only downgrades Disney Hollywood Studios experience, because that's where you really
that's really
right?
where that was the best for that.
Because if you're in the Magic Kingdom, you didn't want to stack because you had so many attractions. You wanted to get as many as possible within your time. And of course, there's plenty of people that stack because they just go in the evening anyway. They don't really care. They lose out on multiple tier 1 type of situations. But yeah, I guess it's a negative. I just hate it. To me, I hate it. I love stacking because it was a good strategy, but I hated it because I'm trying to enjoy some downtime, pool time, whatever, and I got to monitor my stacking for the day. I hated that.
Yeah. I mean, it all kind of rolls into where I think Genie Plus was very effective if you did a lot of day of project management.
Yes.
So now it might be slightly less effective than the optimal under Genie Plus for like power users, but still overall, I think the net benefit is there for sure. And for like 99% of the population, or 90+%, it's going to be a significantly better experience.
So in summary, Genie Plus is now gone. We have Multipass. We will see how the cost structure is in place. But essentially, you now get to book 3 lightning lanes per day, 7 days out. You get to then also book your individual lightning lane called Single Pass now, up to 2 per day. So you can have potentially 5 different selections going into each single day. Now, Phil, what do you think is going to happen when people start booking all these things and all of a sudden they have a $1,000 bill 7 days before the vacation? Do you think that's going to do?
I think that's going to be really interesting to see what happens. Yeah, because if they're doing every day 3, for family of 5, and everyone's $20, and that's at least $120 whatever per day.
Like 50ish, like Magic Kingdom is essentially was $27 today. Yeah. Let's say if it's 25 plus a $20 lightning, it's $45 per person per day.
Yeah.
Multiply that by 5, you're looking at $200 for a 4-day vacation. It's basically some bucks.
So are people going to get to that, and are they going to hesitate when they click and say, well, maybe I don't need it every day. Maybe can I go back inside and remove some of these? So I think it's really going to be interesting to see what the take up on this is versus Genie Plus, where even though people may be acknowledging it's a better system for them, they might not be willing to spend the money when they have to, like you said, spend $1,000 all at once that maybe they weren't planning on or whatever.
Which I think is a mistake in Disney's books. They should have folded this into the actual package. So
which is what they do at Disneyland, and that's staying the same. That's one thing we should mention. All of this is for Walt Disney World. For Disneyland, they are changing the nomenclature. So they are going to the whole single Lightning Lane Single Pass, Lightning Lane Multipass, but they're not changing any of the functionality. So over there,
I think it works well over there.
Yeah, and that's what they said. They said, we understand the parks operate differently, the guests operate differently, and we're not changing it there. But yeah, there it's an add-on when you buy the ticket that you can add on. Now Multipass, whatever, Genie Plus. I wonder if Disney should do that, even if you can't book it until 7 days out. Just when you buy your tickets, whenever, do you want to add? What's your option with the Lightning Lane Multipass or not?
So again, I think the functionality doesn't really change when it comes to the parks, right? The way you go about it, where you might be able to get more, you might be able to move faster. I still don't think Animal Kingdom is worth it at all at this point. Like, you're going to be able to get all the lightnings you want in like 2 hours, like at this point, because there's no rides in that park. I think Epcot is still basically useless at this point.
Yeah.
Unless you want to save yourself maybe an hour's worth of time, maybe it's worth it. You don't mind spending the money, but for a family of 5, it's definitely not worth the money at Epcot for sure. This is totally a massive upgrade for Magic Kingdom Go power users for sure. In Hollywood Studios, I think it's just the nature of that park, how crowded it gets and stuff like that. I think it works maybe if you plan on opening the park.
Yeah. And obviously the only exception would be for families who really want to have that pre-planning element. I know on our boards, Mama 6 has talked about it. She has some kids with disabilities and that sort of thing, that's saying this pre-planning aspect was a hint. Not having that with Genie Plus was a big hindrance to their family. Having this back will really help them out, that it helps out. So that's another benefit for particular families and stuff like that. But yeah, I agree with you. I don't see much value at Epcot. The one other thing I did want to mention, at least as of now in the list, they've removed any character meets from having any lightning lane, which is obviously not the case now.
I think it's good though.
Yeah, it's just kind of interesting because it removes more options and things that people could book.
But think of it this way: you get average dad, right? He says, "All right, I'm gonna buy it's the day of. I'm gonna buy Multipass," and he goes on, and all he sees is like 3 meet and greets that are left, and he's gonna get angry, right? He's not wasting money, but he gets angry. If he goes on and only sees like 2 attractions, he'll be like, it's not worth it. I'm too late.
Yeah, that's true.
It's still a negative event for that person, but it's not like angering, right? Like, you want $15 or $30 for this?
And we'll see if that holds true or if they had it back in, because it is interesting. At Communicore Plaza, where they have the Mickey and Friends meet and greet, they put in like a lightning lane for it. And it's like, okay, so that's going to be in effect for like a month before it goes away.
Yeah,
it's
right.
Kind of interesting. So we'll see. But I know that was something people are commenting on. There's all these little nuances that are coming out, and then things will change and tweak and stuff. It's Disney. It's always going to modify, but it was an exciting day. We had like maybe an hour's notice where somebody had some rumblings on WDW Magic. It was like, oh, this is coming soon. And then it was like, I thought they meant in the next couple of days or something like that. It was like an hour later, like boom.
I mean, this is old school Disney content, right? Like, we were always like back in the day, every quarter, you at least had some big thing that was happening, a new build, new introduction, whatever. I think this is very fun. I'm stoked about the pre-planning aspect of these things. The spreadsheets are back. I just can't wait to see the different strategies that come out of this. The one thing I think is going to be interesting to watch is with the advent of Disney offering all these free hoppers all of a sudden in the back half of the year. For example, Magic Kingdom, you're going to be able to get if it's truly not like you can't overlap the hour time frames, and like you could just start like stacking them independently of each other time wise, you might be able to get a ton of lightning lanes early, and then you're able to go to other parks.
Yeah.
Right. So does this help spread crowds out and make use of other places? Because if you're buying the multi-park multi-pass, I don't know how that's going to work, but if you're doing that, that might be highly beneficial to like park ops.
Yeah, supposedly the way it's going to work is you will go in and you will buy, whichever park you're picking to start at, that's where you'll buy your Multipass for and pay whatever the price is for that park that day. And then when you go to book your 4th, if you want to go to another park, you would be able to do it. I'm assuming there's going to be some sort of, like, let's say the park there is more expensive. You might have to pay the extra couple dollars to then be able to do that or something like that. Again, details that need to be worked out.
Yeah.
But for park hopping, the starting process is going to be the same as everybody else. You pick a park, pay that price after you pick the 3 for that park.
So I know I said let's have a quick emergency podcast for like 20, 30 minutes. We're already at the 45-minute mark. I'm pretty sure we could go longer if we wanted to, but we're going to wrap it up there, Phil. Did we forget anything? I always ask.
No, just we'll be posting things all over Discord, of course, as information. And, some people are posting some stuff in there from like they got us being travel agents and stuff like that. So there's a lot of good information in there. I'll be tweeting out comments and stuff like that. So definitely follow us on all social media.
Get on Discord, start talking about
fun
strategies.
Exactly.
Let's get ready. Let's get ready to go.
Yeah, I appreciate everyone saying I can't wait to get into the spreadsheets and stuff like that. Like you could see, maybe it's just because we kind of have that psychosis or something like that, but everybody was pretty excited about the
it's again, you just don't show up anymore. It's like, I get to do all these different things. So it gives you something to do a week up. It gets you more excited. So I can't wait to start doing it and start talking about it. But anyway, guys, thank you for watching and listening to this emergency podcast. Make sure you watch the show that was published yesterday or this morning.
Yep.
That we're recording this, and all about Pixar movie rankings since 2000. So that was a lot of fun. Hop into Discord, join the conversation with that. The event started this morning, and we'll see you next week. And I think your lovely wife is going to be able to talk about her experience.
Yeah, I just dropped her off at the airport a few hours ago. She's on her way down to Orlando, and their room was ready and stuff like that. So they're excited.
Awesome. So anyway, guys, we'll see you next time. Have a good week.
Take care, everyone.